Hey everybody, welcome to another devlog for a game that will have a name someday, but that is absolutely not today. The conversion to Godot 4.0 is going very smoothly. I'm not all the way caught up to where I was before switching over. I thought I would be by now, but I really have been taking this opportunity to rewrite a lot of code and make things more efficient and more fleshed out and just all around better in lots of ways. I'll have some more details on that in the near future. I've been making improvements like across the board, but nothing's actually done enough to show in a video because that's how I roll. The new inventory system and corresponding UI basically done. And I'll show those off later as well. Right now, you can only equip weapons, and we know there's armor and accessories and everything, but it's all built out. I just have to finish it up. I've also taken this time to reflect on some of the game art because, like a lot of people, I'm never happy with what I've created. And so today I kind of want to talk a little bit about the hero and some changes I've made to the hero's art style, as well as buildings and a new way of doing the interiors for buildings and dungeons and trees too. Definitely trees. Let's start with the hero. On the left, we have the original version of the hero that I like to keep around and reflect on, the Dark Knight version. Gigantic head, really small body. The proportions were kind of off, and it just didn't look right. I eventually, through a couple iterations, moved on to what most of you have seen on the right, the light bulb shaped person. Has a lot better design, a little bit more torso space to work with, and the head is still kind of gigantic compared to the body. The head is larger than the rest of the body. I didn't really like the one on the right too much. The more I used it, the more it just kind of didn't really jive with what I wanted or how I felt. And there were, I don't know, I don't really have like strong reasons why, but I needed to change it. And so I did. And bear with me because what I changed it to at first does not look better. It looks objectively worse at first, but let me walk you through this and hopefully it'll make sense. I decided to go back more towards the blocky origins of the Dark Knight. And what I came up with is this little, went from a light bulb shape to a peg shape. And yeah, believe it or not, I like the one on the right a lot better. Now, let me take a moment to point out the selling points for the version on the right compared to the version on the left. The version on the left looks too much like a light bulb. That is absolutely a huge deal to me, and I couldn't deal with that anymore. The version on the right has a better head to body ratio. It's not this gigantic, huge, massive head to a tiny body. It's a little more equal, and I like that a lot better. The version on the right also has larger feet by a couple pixels, which makes actually a pretty big difference. And the ability to have different outfits actually have different, shoe color that will be noticeable. Probably the biggest difference, though, and the biggest thing that I could say that is actually really cool about this is that there are only 12 pixels making up the torso of the player. Over here, there's 24, so it's actually double that amount of space to work with. So I can now have armor sets that are more than just like a cool looking hat and the rest kind of looks the same because there really wasn't a lot of space to work with there. By the way, this is the unscripted portion of the video, so hopefully I don't just, ramble over my words too much like I have a tendency to do. Scrolling down, I'd like to show off these characters in their more natural habitat, and by that I mean not naked. So if we look on the left, you'll see what you recognize from before, and you can see on the right how I've gone with a larger hairstyle and, more importantly, floating hands. I really wanted floating hands for some reason. I felt like it just made the connection between the player's weapons and items seem a little bit stronger with hands attached to them. Also, I did want to bring shields back, and having a shield and a sword float around the player in a disembodied fashion started to look really strange. So I've zoomed out just a little bit more just so you could see the characters a little bit closer to how you'll be seeing them in the game. But, they'll be even further zoomed out in the actual game. But I wanted to point out too that the character on the right does appear somehow a little bit more cartoonish than the character on the left, and I don't know if you like that or not, but I did just finish finally playing through Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, and so I'm more drawn towards the, I guess, brighter color on the right, even though it's the same palette. I don't know. There's something about the character on the right that just seems a little more lively. But yeah, with that in mind, let's look at how they look holding their weapons. And I'm going to promise you that the character on the left's weapon was not made bad on purpose. I just pasted the weapon above the character and then rotated it as it would be rotated during gameplay. The character on the left can carry their sword and it'll always aim in the direction that the mouse is at. That's how I had that before. While the character on the right can still attack in the direction they're facing or wherever you're aiming at, when they're not actively attacking, they will have their weapons return to a kind of like a point of origin where they are normally holding their sword and or weapon and normally holding their shield. And I think this helps a lot too because now that I have hands, I feel like it looks really weird for the spears and shields to just be, orbiting around the player rapidly as you're aiming at different things and guarding. And I've also brought shields back. I think I didn't need to point that out, but it's shields are back. Um, but yeah, even, especially when you add the weapons floating around, the hands add a lot, I think, to the overall appearance of the character with their weapons. And I don't know. When it's all put together, character on the right sells it for me 100%. They've got more character. They just seem more substantial, I guess, than the character on the left. Not that there's anything wrong with the character on the left. Really, I just am leaning towards more my preference at this point of the character on the right. So that's what we're gonna go with on the characters. Yeah, confidence. Next up, we have some of the terrain features, houses and trees to be precise. The trees don't look bad in their own right, but they don't really fit the context of the game, and I've never really liked them, and they were just kind of always there in the background in some of the clips, and I didn't talk too much about this particular style of tree because while it works to some degree, it doesn't really fit the way the shading and stuff is done doesn't really fit with the rest of the game. Also, I made it on a whim, and everything I make I tend to not like. So that along with this house style, which looks uneven for some reason, it just something doesn't look lined up right. But that's okay. I'm not using that anyway. Um, I've heard this house is okay from some people, but I there was a lot of stuff that just didn't work for me the way I did it, and a lot of it had to do with maybe the brick texturing that I used. It was a little too busy. And if I scroll over to here anyway, it just kind of with the characters that I don't know, it might fit more with the character on the left. I don't know. There's a lot to be desired. You can tell I'm not really a fan of it. Um, so I made some changes. But before I scroll down, I would like to take a moment to point out Studio Mini Boss and their really, really good pixel art tutorials. I will hopefully remember to add a link down in the description or something because if not for those tutorials, I probably would not be able to make buildings better and definitely would struggle more with making trees a little bit more appealing to look at. Using those tutorials that they had, I was able to make some improvements, and the next version of the houses and trees came out to be like this. I will say it definitely fits the new character design better, and overall, I am quite pleased. I don't want to go too much into all the details here because, in essence, I was just following tutorials and applying what I learned there to my old house and stuff, and that's all it really is. But I will say I don't hate the tree design I had before. I do feel like it's a little bit better suited for like a 2D side scroller or something, so I am keeping this around. But in terms of a top-down Zelda like, you can't go wrong with this sort of like Link to the Past style blobby tree. There's a fun little fact here. I actually made it too big for my 3 by 3 tile set size I was going for on this, so I ended up squishing the sides in. So that's why it kind of looks a little bit blobbier than a regular tree should, but I like that. It's definitely more me in something rather than being again my continual desire to not be too derivative of the works from people who are much better than I am at everything. But yeah, this house turned out pretty well. It's definitely not like straight lifted from the tutorial, but I did apply those techniques to the same house shape and came up with something that I like a lot. I'm definitely getting that whole like Pokemon Lavender Town sort of vibe from it. And I like it. I like this a lot. And looking at the characters down here, I think, this new house and tree design really do fit the new character a little bit better. Um, yeah, all in all, I think it's coming together. We're getting some synergy between the structures and the people. Later on, I'll talk more about the insides of dungeons and houses because that's something I wanted to cover at some point, but I might wait until I actually have some gameplay around that as well. And that is going to be about it for today. Just a small art update for everybody. I hope this is something that appeals to people. I'm very excited with the houses and trees, and I haven't shown it off today, but the character in motion with the hands and holding the way they hold their weapons and shield works really well, and I think everyone's going to like that a lot. I will be showing off some actual gameplay updates and changes in the next devlog. I just wasn't really confident with showing off stuff today because I have a lot of things that are uh, mostly ported over and mostly rebuilt. And next time I'll be able to show off some more stuff there. In the meantime, however, enjoy this tree. This tree also, like the game, doesn't have a name.